Greetings and salutations, my friends. What is good in the neighborhood? I'll tell you what's good here, the phrase of the day. And the phrase of the day is second coming, referring to something that is returning stronger and better than ever. I.e., Season 2 of the North Country's most unique podcast, We Got Nothing. And I am your host, the voice of 518. You can @ me on that title, Catalyst Jost. And like how we began last season, we are going to start off this season the way it should be with former co-host, now turned guest, one uncredited soldier of those who are having a tough time battling their own demons within their inner membranes. Please help me welcome Mr. Ayhan, Ozyesil. What is good, hermano?
Hey, how's it going, Daniel? It's great to be a part of this first show of the second season, and I just know you're going to carry it to incredible places, and I look forward to it.
I must admit, it is going to be it's going to be hard to keep up with a specific format, especially in your absence, but I will do my best, and I will try as hard as I can to bring this podcast to the depths of quality that we attempted to do last season. And with that being said, please tell me, my friend, it has been quite some time since I've seen you. How have you been?
I've been all right, man. Just busy. I mean, that's part of the reason why I had to duck out of season 2. I switched jobs. It's a little more demanding hour-wise, at the hospital, working at the mental health unit. And recently I kind of just had a unexpected childbirth. Well, we were expecting, but just not so soon. We were hoping for an October birth date, but we ended up having our daughter, Marvel, 6 weeks early. So
you heard us right here on the first episode of We Got Nothing Season 2. Mr. Ayhan is now twice a father to a lovely, healthy baby girl named Marvel, no less. Of course she is. That's great, dude. Congratulations. In all seriousness.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been pretty wild. Just been trying to get ready for the baby, balance that with trying to, proceed and work and keep doing better. And I finally got my associate's degree this summer. Hopefully I'll be continuing on that path in the mental health field. I'm looking to hopefully maybe one day be a psychiatrist or something like that.
Well, it is safe to say that in this sea storm of shit that is 2021, you're actually doing pretty well, my dude. Like, that's great. I can't help but, honestly voice my envy that you're evolving at such a monumental level. Like, it inspires me to be a better human being, and for other listeners, I'm sure it inspires them to go and chase their dreams and try to find their little slice of heaven.
I'm extremely humbled and flattered at that, and I hope you know that you have a lot of evolution and stuff under your belt, just doing this, I mean, think about it. Just a few years ago, you wouldn't have dreamed of doing something like this, and here we are. But, I mean, besides all that, just to put some context, it took, I'm 34. It took me 16 years to complete and finally finish my associates, little by little, brick by brick, on and off, and life happening and everything, working and all that stuff. And I had a lot of bumps in the road. I did a lot of gestating, if you will.
Digesting, if you will.
Spiritually. Yeah. I was just very, very much, I was that person, a late bloomer, if you will. Now that I'm blooming, it probably seems like I'm blooming very quickly, but what I'm really doing is playing a lot of catch up.
Now, the context of him saying blooming is, as I'm talking to him via video chat, he actually has cherry blossoms blooming in his background, so there's your pun of the day, da-ding.
It's funny, I didn't even realize that. I think I did it without realizing. It's kind of like the Goku thing, I have ultra punstinct.
Oh my god. Well, on the subject of evolutions, what is it? So, going back to what you were saying about your job within the mental health field and whatnot, you say you're working at CVPH Hospital right now, correct?
That's correct. I'm working in the child and adolescent mental health wing, but primarily that's what my designation is. But, you know, you kind of move all over doing that kind of work. So anywhere where your job may apply, which, believe it or not, it can apply in many different places throughout the hospital, that's where they really send you. I mean, depending on seniority and everything like that.
And I imagine that field, that particular job, comes with its own trials and tribulations and whatnot.
I'm sure. I mean, just like any healthcare job, you know, I mean, you're going to have a lot of things that maybe tug at your heartstrings. You're going to have to, I mean, learning how to hang it up on your way out the door is probably one of the hardest things to do. Because no matter what you do, some of it still comes home with you. You're a human being. You know, that's all you can do.
Yeah, it seems like a job that you can't just leave at the office, especially if you have to do some paperwork or homework, if that be the case too.
Well, and the cool thing is, like, that kind of work never really has you being sent home with any kind of paperwork or anything, because, you know, it's very, you know, especially at CVPH, they're very, very strict about HIPAA laws and privacy and medical records and stuff like that. So, especially when it's given like mental health in that arena, you know, because we're well aware of the stigma that it carries, so that, you know, we're very careful about what information is let out.
Now, you said to me before that you were thinking about going for was it psychiatry or counseling?
That's correct.
Okay.
So originally I was thinking of psychology, but the more and more I do research, the more I feel like psychiatry is a bit better for me for several reasons, just because of the level of change that I can affect on that. It's not just at the clinical level when it comes to therapeutic things, but it's also on the medicinal level, the chemical level, the neurobiological level.
What is the difference between like psychiatry, psychology, or more accurately, like counseling per se, you know?
Okay. Yeah, no. That's not an ignorant question at all, because it is, like with any other facet of the healthcare field, you know, it can be confusing because there's so many different specialties. So, for instance, I'll just start from the ground up, what people commonly know. So what they know, a lot of people know therapists or mental health counselors, licensed mental health counselors, what you might hear as LMHC or anything like that, or what people call a therapist. That's what you're going to see a lot of in, say, like clinical facilities and stuff like that. Those are the therapists, you know, the people that do a lot of the talk therapy and stuff like that. And sometimes the people that can do that as well are social workers as well, but they can tap into different billing systems, and they approach the issues that we may bring to them from different, vantage points. So, for instance, with counseling, it can be a little bit different from social work, whereas social work may focus on the whole sociology aspect of how society and all the stuff kind of affects you and everything like that. A counselor might be looking at it more from the vantage point of your immediate surroundings and the people that surround you and all those kinds of things. Now, where psychology comes in, that's a totally different thing. It's like it's the same thing, but at the same time, it's also different. You're looking at things from a different point of view, whereas, you know, all that other stuff is kind of like how other various stimuli and input affects you. Psychology, on the other hand, is more of that intrinsic stuff where in your head, that's where it's at. Like what's going on inside your head, thinking, like change your thinking kind of stuff. It can be behavioral. It can be all sorts of stuff. Now, finally, at the final rung where I want to go, psychiatry is that step further where I will actually be getting my MD or my DO. So I would be like legit medical doctor. So I could do like a checkup or, stuff like that kind of, depending on what my specialty is. Obviously, it's going to be psychiatry, which will be more mentally focused. But I can prescribe medicine and stuff that only few people in that chain can do. Like, certain nurses can do that. Certain nurses can prescribe, obviously doctors. So yeah, I mean, the reason I'm going for it is, several reasons, but I feel like the change that I want to affect is on that level.
Now with the psychiatry stuff, as you were just mentioning about, especially in the regards of prescribing medicinal properties to patients, will that require you to ascertain some credits within the chemistry field?
Absolutely. In fact, I have to take a year of chemistry as a prerequisite before I'd even enter. So what I was saying, like getting my MD, I will be going to med school. So that's the whole idea. Like, I'll be going to med school. I'll be doing the residency for like the 4 to 5, maybe 6 years, depending on what I want to do as my specialty and my fellowship. But by the end of it, I'll be Dr. Han, and I'll be hopefully helping people.
Big Papa Han, DMD. You end up giving your patients Dragon Ball themed lollipops at the end of each session. It's like that will literally bring them at ease. I know it would for me, definitely.
Change the face of psychiatry.
Now, Ayhan, God, I think I can speak for a lot of people when saying, like, going through all these years and schooling, trials and tribulations, like probably hours of having to just gain experience without, let alone before even going into like learning the field. What inspired you to even go down the journey of mental health as a whole?
So, it's tough because, like, I've been asked that question, but I've never really thought about answering that question. But I guess when it boils right down to it, I had a really rough upbringing for a lot of reasons. And because of that, I've always searched for, like, a peace. And luckily, the way that I searched for it for a long part of my life was more of a dissociation and stuff like that, where I was just kind of running away from my problems. But I wasn't violent. I wasn't necessarily hurting anybody. It wasn't noticeable. It was just basically I was this drifter. I got stoned. I, drank here and there, and I'd party with my friends, and I'd drift on to the next thing. Every so often, I never really stuck around. So nothing was ever really permanent for me because I guess, who knows? I'm still kind of digging into all that. But I guess, I met my wife now, and she definitely was a huge inspiration. She's a counselor who's doing big things and moving forward in her own career. She was a huge inspiration. And because of the things we've done, growing together, having a family, that kind of inspired me. You and watching all my friends kind of just, really be themselves. Their unadulterated, authentic selves was a huge inspiration. And because I had I'm a child of mixed race, and I think you can understand this as well. Mm-hmm. That there's a lot of identity issues with that, and maybe feeling like you don't necessarily fit in all the way, no matter how tight you are with mm-hmm. people and stuff. There's just that feeling. And even when you go to, say, for me, when I go to Ecuador or Turkey or something like that, I still don't feel like I fit in because, again, they don't see me as all the way this or all the way that. I'm always going to be the American kid or the Ecuadorian kid or the Turkish kid or whatever. You know what I mean? So, or the New Yorker, whatever you want to call it. So there's a lot of identity stuff there. So it's like a mishmash of all these things that led me to my first job with the ARC. Then eventually that somehow through other jobs led me to NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illnesses, one of the best jobs I ever had. Still love it. Still love that place. Great resource. I'd absolutely recommend that to anybody around here or anywhere you are. There's probably a NAMI chapter or something like it. I absolutely recommend you research it because it's some of the best resources you can use, absolutely free, almost anywhere you go. And, you know, you have one-on-one peer like service, events to attend, groups and all that stuff, whether, you know, it be digitally or whatever, given the pandemic. So all that kind of stuff, you know, I've done. And then eventually, you know, applying to this position at the hospital here, you know, I've noticed everything I've done, a friend of mine pointed out, has been kind of leading in the direction of mental health. And, you know, in my head, you know, when I was a kid, I'd hear it from my mom or other people that, oh, you should be a doctor or something like that. Like they would always say, oh, with the brain you have, you should be a doctor.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, first of all, there's a lot of probably not great mental stuff you did there for me in terms of, you know, expectations and setting the bar way too high for myself, which definitely kind of maybe had something to do with that whole drifter thing all that time. But,
yeah, I think that's
a
big. I think that's a big problem with not just people of our current generation, but upcoming generations too. About what is it? Placing those kind of expectations on them, like going for the doctorates and the what do you call it? These big ass degrees that just take so long to attain, and that only a handful of people can actually attain, because mainly like. And this goes back to one of Shakespeare's quotes: "Expectation is the root of all heartache." Like, if in the event that it doesn't happen, and you've been like instilling this programming into the young mind that you got to do this or you're fucked, especially within just the realm of college. If something should go south, like it can really wane on the person if should life throw you a curveball and you have to change direction in some way. It can almost make you feel like a failure in some aspects. And I'm also using some of my own personal experiences when saying that answer.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I feel the same way. You know, I mean, I get it. I get that. You know, just setting the bar that high, it can be detrimental. And I know that for me right now, I have to be very careful about that because I know right now, as it stands, you know, by chances of even getting into a medical school, probably not the best because I have a lot of work to do repairing certain grades and stuff to bring up my average. But, you know, it's all stuff that I feel is worth it because it just all aligns. I found what kind of makes, you know, what things make me happy. And for me, it's options. Options make me happy.
There you go, right there. And then, speaking of what you're saying about what makes you happy versus what makes you successful, like I think they're intertwined, but like people say that there's a big difference to it. Well, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Jeff Bezos. I don't care if you're the hobo walking down the street on South Cat or anything like that. Like, if you're not happy, no amount of money, be it $2 or $2 billion, is gonna change that direct thinking in life. It could for a couple, but those are rare cases.
I think also a lot of it is nuance because sure, maybe directly money doesn't necessarily just equal happiness, but like I think. See, that's what it is for me, too, that whole option thing. Well, okay, these are the three major reasons why I want to do what I want to do. One, I want to help people, you know, on a level where I know I needed help growing up, or, you know, even as an adult. Two, you know, I mean, yeah, there's a lot that comes with being a doctor that I do like. You know, I like that. The fact that, you know, you have that challenge, the mysteries, the puzzles to solve, and all that, and at the same time, you know, you're doing good. You're doing good stuff. And number three, heck yeah, it's the money. You don't get paid anywhere else in a lot of professions like you do as a doctor. You know, and not just that. I mean, yes, there's going to be a lot of bills to pay after that, but you know, you're going to pay them off because I mean, you make money hand over fist, and not only that, but the way I look at it, the whole options talk that I was talking about, yes, perhaps the example you were talking about can be true on a certain level, but I think there's a lot more nuance to that, because say you have enough money to not just pay your rent, pay all your bills, all the amenities, streaming services. You have every streaming service you can think of, and food, yada, yada, DoorDash. You can order DoorDash without even thinking about it, because you're like, hey, money's in the bank. I'm good. Like, you can buy this, buy that, because then instead of worrying about where your next meal or where your next check or where your next rent check or utility check is coming from, you got time to think about what makes you happy. You got time to pursue the things that make you happy.
Okay.
So I think it's more of a nuance on that.
Okay, I see what you mean there. I see what you mean. And here's the thing. What is it? Money itself is a form of energy. It really depends on what kind of spin headspace-wise you bring on it. Because if you always think that there's never enough and you want to gorge yourself on it, then you'd be living life as a glutton in that aspect. So that's not healthy at all.
Very true.
And
yeah, very true.
And you're always looking for that security of, be it financial gain or something else damn near close to it, but never finding it or recognizing when it actually falls in your lap. For me, going back to what you were saying before about having permanence in my life, like, my upbringing was well off, definitely. The biggest thing is, again, there was not much permanence. Leaving from one town to go to another or go to another family member's house, and then finding you have to go back to a certain area because your parent finally met someone who was worth a damn, and then even in school, there's not much permanence because you're meeting a handful of kids that you never know. And then you're going into freaking middle school and high school and going through an entirely different growing process and environment with a whole bunch of new people. For me, that's what kept me going with the creative stuff, like reading, writing, acting, and all that stuff, because that shit was always permanent in my life. Like, definitely watched too many cartoons as a kid, but that's also what gave me my interest for stuff like voice acting and basically creating these worlds and these characters that are beyond fiction in order to tell stories or give light to issues that a lot of people try to shy away from in the growing world at large there. But what is it? In all honesty, it's more about shifting the thinking process of it, like acknowledging where you were, but also not being stuck in the past because of it, like learning from it, but don't dwell on it. I think that's the hardest thing, like keeping together who you are in the moment and where you're going.
Very well said. Absolutely.
Now, what is it? So on that subject, speaking of where we are and how we're going, like I was saying before, you've had a great 2021, but am I wrong in thinking that 2021 has been a tad bit shittier than 2020? I mean, 2020 threw a lot of big curveballs, but holy shit.
Well, and to be 100% honest, like, I know at face value now, everything seems like it's going great for me and stuff, but a lot of it too is, I'm not gonna lie, is more of that. Like, I have some good stuff going for sure, but at the same time, I've had a lot of moments where I've been very on the fence, if you will, or on edge. Like, I honestly think, I almost hate to think of it this way, but like, I think it was almost meant to be for my daughter to come around this time, because it almost feels like I was kind of hanging on by the skin of my teeth, and then this almost kind of allowed for me to have that break where I could step away from everything, and like you were saying earlier, we were talking like focus on family. I've been able to do that in a way that I haven't been able to in such a long time, because all of us were just going through the motions, just trying to survive after 2020. After doing our jobs, like I was working with NAMI, I was doing my job indoors in a room, and I didn't even really leave the house like for months at a time. It was nuts, man. Like it was nuts. And so, I mean, leading into this year, I definitely think there were some good points, and then there were like a lot of those. Man, I gotta tell you, there's so many days where I started doing overnights with this job, which was rough. I mean, the people were great, the work was great. I love my coworkers and everything, and I love my coworkers now. It's just sometimes the sleep and the timing, it can be brutal, man. Like overnights, I mean, that kind of just says it all. There's very few people on this earth that are amenable or agreeable physically to overnights.
I know, you'd be surprised. Taking the subject away from the professional and more into the personal, like what is it? I'll admit, my social health has waned off and on since the beginning of the year. It has improved greatly in many areas, but one of the biggest struggles I have is trying to meet people during the daytime, just to talk, hang out, and whatnot. Because a lot of people I know in our age group, which ranges from college age to going into being an adulting, if you will. A lot of people are spending more times at the bars at night, and now I'm going to take the moment to flex. October marks 9 months no drinking. Holla at you, boy. It's made it. Thanks, and it's made it harder. Not just the pandemic, like people coming out of their own quarantines or soon to be going back into their own quarantines, depending how Delta variant affects everything in the area. It's really hard to not only nurture those social relationships in varying degrees of depth, be it from the the superficial to the deep, but also have genuine experiences with the people, being vulnerable, if you will, because after a while of spending so much time in social isolation, and a lot of it self-imposed, you definitely keep those guards up, even with people you fuck with, because it's a defense mechanism. Naturally, the human condition prevents us from seeking out that which hurts us, but at the same time, being out of your comfort zone makes you grow. So it's a fucking social paradox in that aspect. But also that's why we got season 2 on here started back up, because what your job is to you with the mental health is this thing right here is what it is to me. The being able to socialize and tell stories and point out the human condition in creative ways, be it writing or visual media versus the audio stuff here with the podcasting, Yeah,
I definitely get that. I mean, as you know, a lot of my friends know, that's kind of how I am always. It was like that even before the pandemic. Ayhan, he's like a groundhog or some shit. Sometimes I'll just freaking disappear for months.
Well, there was a good meme I saw on Facebook where your friends aren't ignoring you. They're just busy. They're busy with their 9-to-5s, or possibly their 60 to 80 hour a week jobs, or they could have families. They could be going through their own trials and tribulations and don't know how to reach out or even know if anyone can really help them. It's one of those things where communication is the key to it all, but at the same time, it's hard to communicate with that because, and this comes off from old style, old style values, and the fact that if you had something wrong, you kept your mouth shut about it and you dealt with it yourself. But now, especially in the realms of mental health, we're realizing that it's just not that simple anymore.
Yeah, yeah, it's exactly it. I mean, and all the above, man. I mean, that's always my issue. I'm always the guy that's like, hey, I'm here to help or whatever, this and that, and then I have the hardest time asking for help. You know what I mean? And in fact, sometimes I have a hard time even making a sound, just talking, like just because. I don't know. I'm so hot and cold when it comes to that. I mean, but if someone reaches out to me, that's one thing. I mean, I can definitely get very, I can become very isolated for sure at times, and I get that. I think this pandemic definitely kind of triggered a little more of that. But at the same time, I feel like I've done a really good job of trying my best to keep touch.
Now, you've known, based off your upbringing, you know what it's like to live in both an urban and rural environment. And looking at some of the statistics I have in front of me, with your opinion right now, like, where do you see a lot more cases, especially within mental health and suicide, really pop up that you've seen over time?
I mean, it's kind of hard because it could really go either way. Just from sheer population, you would think city areas, urban areas, but I'm thinking I might maybe this is kind of outside the box thinking, but I'm thinking because it's not quite as crowded and because there's maybe not always as many things to either do or distract yourself with or other reasons, maybe not as many people. I'm thinking it might be in more rural areas.
Yeah, well, here's the interesting thing I'm seeing right now. I'm looking up the stats on, this is from the CDC, cdc.gov, and it's the stats of states with suicide mortality rates. You see that there are varying degrees of death rate and overall deaths in different states. What is it? Death rates could be high in one state, but their overall deaths can absolutely be lower. Like, you are right in the fact that you said rural?
Yeah.
Here's the interesting thing. You see more states with more urban-like environments actually displaying higher deaths, but they have lower death rates. It's almost a paradox in that aspect.
It's because it's population-based. It's just because of how many people are there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, of course, the numbers are going to be higher. You know what I mean?
Here's another
overall.
Yeah, here's another factor that most people don't take into consideration too, and this is where we bring into the topic of diversity, not just amongst race, but amongst the LGBTQ community. You see a lot more suicide rates within those demographics of those who are not white or not straight, really. I mean, what was it? And I've had talks about this with many of my friends who are mixed race and have lived in urban environments. What is it? Mental health, mental illness actually is just not. It's almost like the plague amongst these communities. Like with Black people especially, like the idea being that if you got something wrong with you in the membrane, it's no different than having COVID, unfortunately. You think that it is this disease that you should shun someone away from. And I don't even know where that mindset even begins. It seems almost like, what do you call it? Prehistoric or even volatile in nature in that aspect.
Well, I mean, if you really think about it, it's really not that ancient. And it's really shocking because we still have that stigma. I mean, I think it's only now, very recently, that people started speaking up about it. And, you'll see that it's not just in, white communities. It'll be in LGBTQ communities, Black communities, Hispanic communities, Asian communities, like everywhere, Baltic communities, like they're all starting to, at least, it's a generational thing, I think.
It's also a pride thing if you think about it, because what is it? You think about these families having their own pride and their own ego, and then what is it? It's only been in the past handful of years that people have been more accepting of the LGBTQ community and more aware of mental health at large. And these stigmas on these communities that still going on today can be considered a blight or a black mark on not just the family record, but also amongst the peers of that community.
And it's due to sad misconceptions and very misguided traditional notions like that people, are put in these statistics of suicide and these horrible, positions that they're put in. A lot of people don't have their family as a result of these things behind, their back. And, it's lonely to begin with, you know what I mean, when you're in a position like that. But then to have other people just kind of shun you based off of that, it's even worse.
And the thing about tradition is, the hard thing about it is it negates one of the 6 basic life processes as a biological organism, and that's adaptation. To progress, you need to adapt with the times and keep going. A big, huge chunk of communities, diverse or otherwise, simply don't have that.
I think a lot of it, too, has to do with, this is just my personal theory, but I think a lot of it has to do with the human fascination with death, or the fear of it, even.
Yes.
Because you know what I mean? Because tradition is only a means of passing on what certain people did, because they want them or their ways, or them through their ways, being remembered as time goes on and moves on, because ideals going away, to them, that's the true death. So I think a lot of it has to do with that. And, sometimes, unfortunately, warped ethics, twisted ideals are passed down in that regard. Unfortunately, that brings harm to a lot of people. And, I think the more people really start waking up and realizing that we're all human, we're all subject to all of these issues, the more empathy we treat these things with, the better place we're just all going to be in. If it's, they say, if we're not all happy, then we're not all happy,
Well, also going off what you were saying before, one of the biggest things we also have to acknowledge is and come to terms with as a whole species, is that eventually our hearts are going to stop and we're going to experience either the final steps of this life or the beginnings of a new transition into another one. We are all going to die. And going off of what you were saying before, the fear of death, that's what drives every single one of us. That's what drives us to eat. That's what drives us to reproduce. That's what's driven a lot of the big progressive changes in society. That's what's driven a lot of miracles. But at the same time, that's what's driven a lot of tragedies. That overall feeling of death. That's the reason why people go out of their way to make their own legacies, because they want to be remembered even once their bodies are long decayed into the earth,
Absolutely. I halfingly joke about how I really hope I make it to the singularity. I really hope I'm old enough to make it to the point where they're able to meld the human mind with computer. So I can just kind of see the future as a robot. I don't know. I kind of want to see it.
Well, that's the reason why Wade Wilson is so batshit, because he literally cannot die. And he can feel every single wound that is inflicted upon his body. He is immortal, but he can feel pain at the same time. If someone is immortal, basically, I posed this question to a good friend of mine, what is the price for immortality, and flat out it's the soul. That's the price of it, because without mortality, there is no appreciation for life. There's no appreciation for the food you eat, for the wind and sun on your skin. There's no appreciation for building up your body to be healthy. There's no appreciation for your partner, for your family, for your friends, because you know you're going to outlive all of it. So what's the point in even giving it a passing glance? Like a better example there. A better example is, look at who is it? The Omega Man from Omni Man from Invincible.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I see what you're saying. I mean, and it's funny because even more so, I actually have been binge watching True Blood throughout this whole thing that I've been going through. And as a result, I saw a lot of the topics you're just talking about now kind of explored with vampires instead. But it's definitely very, very interesting. I mean, just seeing how it all relates. But either way, it's a lot of things drive us. But at the end of the day, I mean, maintenance is key. It's finding the formula for each of us, whether that includes medication, exercise, socialization.
A vehicle cannot run 24 hours a day without some kind of routine maintenance. And what is it? Going back again to the fear of death, one of the biggest things with mental illness is that it really makes it that much harder to appreciate life as a whole, God.
Definitely can, yeah.
Well, what was it? I was actually looking up a few. I was sifting through my movie collection earlier about some of my old favorites there, and I failed to realize how many of them actually tackle a lot of the issues that we still hold today. Some of them much more accurate than others. One of the things that mental health really prevents is not only the actual motivation to make human connection, but the ability to consistently to have a consistency with it. Some of the biggest examples that have portrayed this have been, one of my favorites was Benny and June from the 90s. That was one of Johnny Depp's biggest breakout roles in terms of getting out of that pretty boy mentality. But the whole arcing theme of the story is June being able to make those human connections emotionally with people that she struggled with. And when Sam came along in that journey, she not only started doing that, she also found romance in that regard. I mean, those are some great examples. I'd like to kind of go with a bit of a different example, one that I know is pretty near and dear to both of our hearts. Recently watching and something new coming out in regards to it. Recently, I just finished rewatching The Sopranos, which talk about mental health and how much that had to do with that show. I mean, in fact, at least 50% of the show, Tony's in a room speaking to a psychiatrist. So, that just says it right there. And his relation, Tony Soprano, the I guess incumbent mob boss of the series, if you want to call it that, or no, I'm sorry, waste disposal management guy, and his relation with family and all the other people and how their mental health was affected as a result. The way they interact with the folks. I mean, you saw a lot of that, and I thought that's what made the show so popular and raw in its reality. Now, tell me something. Do you find it interesting that now Tony clearly demonstrated a lot of issues pertaining to narcissistic personality disorder? And and again, going back with Dr. Melfi there, I get there were some things she couldn't do because Tony was a criminal. but even so, like being a mental health care official, like there was a lot she did that not only enabled Tony and even made him go even further into the depths of his disorder, but there are some aspects that could also point to Melfi as an antagonist in the series, because there was a lot she did not help Tony with, you know?
And here's the thing with that is, yeah, that can be one part that's explored, because a lot of that you could tell was Melfi's fascination with Tony. And like, it's the same fascination we all had with them, watching this person that we knew was deeply flawed. And you know, I mean, I think she definitely made genuine attempts to help him with his issues, like where she tried to tell him to do things. But the thing is, that's the tragic thing about being a healthcare official, is you can tell someone to do something till you're blue in the face, but unless you have some sort of legal way of getting to make sure that they do it, there's really no guarantee they're going to do it.
Well,
and the problem is with that kind of work, we the patient, it's up to us. We got to do the work, or else it's not going to get done.
But here's another interesting aspect regarding Melfi in the series, because you know that during the series she also saw her own therapist, who himself was kind of being unprofessional with her in very unprofessional in many aspects. But there was actually, especially when inviting her to dinner and all her colleagues kind of banking on her, ragging on her about seeing.
I don't think he was her therapist. That's a thing that therapists, psychiatrists do. It's called peer review. So they basically unload. Okay. So they unload stuff about their different clients, but they never mention any details, any names, and they're both bound by HIPAA to not reveal anything outside of that room.
Right. Still going off of Melfi.
But he was still very unprofessional about it, though.
Yes.
I agree.
He definitely put a lot of bias on her, and there was some peer pressure in the professional field in that regard, too. But here was an interesting thing. There was one dream sequence. You know how that series is with dream sequences. There was one dream sequence of Dr. Melfi's where she's actually like dreaming about having sex with Tony. Now, here's something I took away from that. In a way, it almost sets up, and this is a fan theory on my part, that in some aspects, Melfi's true motivations were not to help Tony. In the aspect of her having sex with Tony in her dream, she's kind of stroking her own ego in the fact that maybe she could be the first person to really help and cure a major criminal like Tony Soprano, who is like very infamous and clearly has many issues of his own, as the series has constantly pointed out. So in that aspect, she was not caring about the patient's overall well-being in the long run, but more how she would look in the long run, especially from a professional standpoint. But that's just my look at it.
Yeah, actually, when you put it that way, I definitely see parts of the series where it alludes to her pride getting in the way of things, but also, I mean, you got to look at the way too that Tony dealt with her at certain points.
Oh yeah, Tony was a fuckface in many aspects.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, hey, let's definitely not sugarcoat it. In a lot of ways, Tony was an absolute monster to everyone in his life.
On that subject, also, I don't know if you ever watched this show. BoJack Horseman was the same way. Animated, yes, an animated talking horse. So, like, that's going to turn a lot of people who are more serious off. But BoJack explored the deepest levels of PTSD and depression and how they can get started. And BoJack was funny, but like in the end, he was kind of a cocksucker too, because he really did a big number job on a lot of his relationships, personal and professional. He he nearly ended the lives of several coworkers. Actually, did end the lives of several coworkers. He messed up his family life, and the tragedy of the story is that that stuff is it's a family disease that can be passed down from generations, just not in the aspect you would assume a physical condition will.
Yeah, I definitely see the similarities in what you're drawing there in those comparisons. But I also think at the same time where those lines start to diverge, really start to kind of really part ways when it comes to motivation. Whereas a lot of the times Bojack's motivations were selfish and narcissistic, absolutely. He wasn't always outright willing to hurt people. Not necessarily in the way that Tony was. Tony, he did certain things. He, strangled people. He, brutalized folk. Just the things that he did specifically to, also ordering people's quote-unquote disappearances, that had shockwaves in terms of who it affected and stuff like that. We're talking just next level stuff here. This is if Bojack jumped the line from narcissist to
full-blown sociopath.
Well, violent mob boss. Yeah. Basically with world-class violent
tendencies.
Violent psychopath. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I loved about both of these shows, even BoJack, even though it was animated, both of these shows did an excellent job portraying mental illness and the mental health field in general without sugarcoating a lot of it. It was real and in your face. And that was one of the things that made Sopranos so good. It's because its characters were realer than life itself, Oh,
yeah. And I like the fact that they were not, like you said, they weren't sugarcoating. They were look, Tony's a monster. Can he be charming? Sure. But overall, he's a bad man. He's a misogynist. He's a racist. He's all these things. He's violent. He's a murderer. Literally every bad thing you can think of in the book. But then you're oh wait, but he's able to compartmentalize these things, kind of like Dexter was. He had a family and all this stuff, And so it's just the realism. It's obviously the extreme, but it kind of showed that realism in a sense where, hey, people who live with mental illnesses, it's not as uncommon as you think. We all do, in a sense. It's just the degrees vary. The support we have varies and all the things. Some people just have natural built-in supports and don't even know it.
And off of that, from that from that spectrum, and this is where I start to get a little bit kind of mad myself, is from that spectrum, some of the forms of visual media that have absolutely have done a shit job at portraying mental illness. One in particular, and I love this movie just because I love James McAvoy, but Split, 24 different personalities, split personality disorder, aka dissociative personality disorder. This is a disorder that's highly rare in the human race, and it's definitely one that overshadows a lot of other more common mental health conditions like depression and anxiety. You see a man with 24 different quote unquote personalities in his body, and I like the science fiction aspect that each personality kind of completely changes his genetic makeup, his chemical outbreak, but at the same time too, it's done for more horror superhero kind of aspect instead of actually tackling the heart of the problem. And actually, another favorite film of mine, an old film actually, Psycho, the first slasher film, is also guilty of this because Norman Bates, it does have dissociative personality disorder because he switches to the unhinged homicidal version of himself, which he believes is his mother.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and so like, I couldn't agree more on both those. And I think one of the films that I saw recently, well, when I say recently, within the past few years, I mean, was Beautiful Mind, about John Nasser. And we were lucky enough to actually have Sylvia Nasser visit and here in Plattsburgh and
Really?
do a showing of the film. Yeah. NAMI, actually, I was working for them at the time, and we did like a showing at Cumberland 12. Sylvia Nasser came and spoke a couple times. It was amazing. And you know, so like that really tackled more of like schizophrenia and stuff like that, which is another. It's actually it's hard to say statistically where it lies. I don't necessarily know that, but I do know that it's prevalent enough that obviously it's a major topic, and not just that, but it's something that, you know, it affects a lot of people, just like DID. You know, it affects quite a lot of people, no matter, you know, how rare the percentages may show. Sometimes percentages don't show the truth of the numbers, which, you know, it says 2% of the population, but 2% of the population.
Yeah, like there's 7 billion people in the world, so 2% of the population, like, holy shit, could fill like one, what do you call it, small metropolitan area alone. Like, come on.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And so like, when we're talking about like dissociative identity disorder and stuff like that, it's like you said, split. You know, it really unfortunately kind of shines a lot of stigma on it, and really, really kind of like perpetuates it in a lot of senses. Like, it makes it something for people to be scared of. Like in certain Law and Order episodes where you'll have people who suffer from schizophrenia being the criminals and stuff, when in reality, the statistics will show that these people with these disorders are more likely to be the victims of a crime, you know, because of this kind of violence or anything like that.
Exactly.
And everything that surrounds it.
Another piece of media that really disappointed me in the aspect of really explaining overall mental illness, in particular depression and PTSD and suicide ideation, was actually 13 Reasons Why. That show has actually been under several bouts of controversy regarding suicide awareness. I had read the book beforehand. I own it. It's a pretty good book, but what is it? The way it was portrayed in the Netflix show, it leaned too much towards teen drama in the aspect and mystery of it versus like what was actually going through Hannah's head, and more importantly, like, what were the resources available to try to prevent it, and where to go forward with it. And I think one of the biggest mistakes the show made was taking liberties beyond the book and filling their own shit. That's what a lot of TV shows fall under the danger of with that. And also, again, going back to it, like, it focused a little bit too harder on the teen drama versus the actual stigmas of the mental disorder itself, while shows like Degrassi were absolutely brilliant in their portrayals of teens with mental health disorders, you know?
Oh, yeah. I actually... Degrassi, The Next Generation is actually one of my favorites growing up. It's just interesting how that show is able to tackle topics in such a responsible yet very adult way, dealing with these high schoolers, but we're able to kind of like teach these lessons. And I'm like, man, I don't know, man, like, maybe... you know, it makes you think, like, does that make you feel like maybe everyone who watched the show growing up is kind of level-headed now?
At the very least, it clearly shows that there is a connection in between where people's heads are at when they view that show and how they felt when they were watching it as it was coming out, you know?
Oh, yeah. I saw, like, that show. I watched this channel growing up towards, like, in my high school age, because I was able, through my own work, I was able to pay for my own cable. And I wanted cable ever since I was a kid. We could never afford it. I mean, it's just, I know my parents just didn't want to spend the money, and it was expensive. But once I finally was able to, get my own job when I was a teenager, we got it. And I was like, yeah, I want this. And I started watching this channel called The N, which is how I found it.
Yep, that's how I found that as well. Yep.
And I watched this other show called Radio Free Roscoe, which was like another huge Canadian show, I guess. Or who knows? Maybe there it's like no one gives a crap about it.
Yo, could you imagine what it would have been like if Degrassi would have gotten the Office treatment and there would have been an Americanized version of it? Like,
oh man, I can't even imagine. I mean, honestly, the closest thing I can think of to it was that show City Guys.
That one's lost on me.
The one on NBC, it was more of a 90s show. It was, oh my God, I still remember the theme song is so, oh my God, it's so cheesy. It was like C-I-T-Y, you can see why these guys smart and streetwise.
All right, I like that. I like that. I'll have to give that a little bit of a look.
It was so bad. Oh.
Now.
But yeah.
Now moving forward, especially going down this career field, what are some of the struggles and tribulations you're looking at down the road, especially now that you're raising a family with 2 children?
Yeah, I mean, you said it right there. I mean, family, 2 children, and as I was mentioned earlier, throughout the whole birth process, I was kind of coming back and forth from Vermont, and we unfortunately lost our corgi of 15 years. More my wife's dog for sure, but I definitely had a bond with him, and just that, and having my other dog, like that makes me feel like, man, I want to take more walks with them and stuff like that. The one that we have now and stuff, and so like spend more time with my family. Get as many hours in as I can at work so I can make as much cash so I can, we can live in a way that is not, like I said, skin of our teeth. And because that's at the end of the day, that's my dream. I'm kind of like Yo Asakura from Shaman King, man. The only reason I want to be Shaman King is so that me and my friends can live an easy life. That's all. That's all I want.
For anyone who listens to this, new people, friends, peers, wherever, what do you say to those who are absolutely struggling with their own lives, with their own mental health, and like who think that there's just no other way to go through it without the will of themselves alone?
I say definitely reach out. I mean, I think deep down in your heart, people who are good to you, and the people that are like emotional vampires and all that. Just definitely sift through that. That's definitely one thing that can help. But I'm also going to tell you and me, I tell this myself every day, is because it's hard. It's hard to keep it up. But I'm going to say something my therapist told me a long time ago that I've taken and I've built upon it. And it's the reason why I am where I am today. What they told me was, one of the most important things you can remember is the phrase, "this too shall pass." When you're having a bad time, you're having a time where you feel like you don't see a way out, just remember, you felt this way before, but you got through it before. Even though that time you also felt, oh man, like, oh, you don't know my situation, this is the end, this is it. Like, you felt that way before. And even if you don't think you have, there's been a time in your life where, like, chances are you have felt similar to that, but it passed. Mm. And that's the thing. I mean, obviously there's going to be some really extreme situations out there, and I can't really speak to those. But what I can say is, to a lot of situations when you're having a really bad, rough time of it, or even just a stagnant time, just remember, this too shall pass. And when you're having good times, remember, this too shall pass, because it's important then too. because then it forces you to be in the moment and really absorb it, really soak it in, because those are the moments you're going to need to hold on to when you have the rough times. There's those days where I feel like crap inside, no matter what. And, I've definitely been feeling a lot of that lately, but I'm starting to little by little kind of dig my way out of there by doing good things for myself around my house, my living situation, trying to clean things up, make my basement a livable place, so that I can do things down there like work out and office space. But yeah, remember, this too shall pass. And another good thing, I don't even know if this is really him saying it, but I remember seeing this meme that's attributed to Jim Carrey saying something about, depression is depression for sure. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no cheer up. There's no this or that, because that's asinine trying to tell somebody that. But, you got to give yourself credit wherever credit's due. So if all you do is open your eyes in bed one day and you just stare at the ceiling, give yourself that. Give yourself that pat on the back, because it might give you enough energy for the next day to not just do that, but sit up in bed. And the next day, maybe you'll watch TV. Next day, you might even get the heck out of bed. You got to give yourself you got to give yourself the credit where the credit's due. And I think another good rule, this one's just all me. It's not something that I learned from other things. I learned from life. A lot of the times, if you're on the verge of something that you might be able to try and you're scared, or you feel like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Maybe this is a little bit too much or something. But obviously, listen to yourself. If it is too much. But anything short of that, if you're scared of something, do it.
There's always a million reasons not to do something.
Right. Do it. Just head into it face first, because you know what? 9 times out of 10, there's glory on the other side.
And flat out, guys, to all those who are listening to this, like Papa Han just said, we all know where this journey ends for all of us. We all know that we have only a limited time on this space. So why spend time sweating the small stuff? And for those of you who try their hardest to day in, day out bust their ass to improve your lives or the lives of your loved ones, or etc., please take the time to appreciate the fact that you have maybe 2 working legs or 2 working arms, or if neither of those, that you have the ability to have air pass through your lungs and be able to hear, see, or even smell the world around you. Like Ayhan said, take the time to give yourself credit, because yes, you can receive external credit all you want all day, but at the end of the day, a lot of it's not going to mean much unless that same kind of love and appreciation does not come from within. And for those of you who are, even in spite of all that, are struggling with trying to grasp those core concepts, definitely don't be afraid. For my 518 people, don't be afraid to reach out to any hotline that can provide help. This including the Clinton, Essex, and Franklin County Crisis Center, which is 518-561-2330. More down south towards the Albany area, there is the Albany Crisis Hotline at 518-447-9650. Also within the Capital District, there is the Samaritan Suicide Prevention Center, which will be 518-689-4673. And to any of those who are actually listening to us interstate, cross states, or hell, please don't be afraid to reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. And remember, guys, we're all in this together. We're all rats in a maze. Some of us are dropped in at different intervals within the maze. And for some of us, the path to the cheese is straightforward, while others, it's just it's either a mad dash or you got to go through a series of walls and dead ends in order to find the right path. But eventually, we all get to the cheese. It's just a matter of giving yourself the time, effort, and more importantly, the credit and appreciation. Squeak, squeak.
Yeah, and I do want to say one more thing. Touching back on what you were saying before, like, also, no matter what your physical, mental capabilities and how you feel about yourself, we all deserve love and care and it's something to look out for us, even if that's ourselves. Like, and I think we're all very much deserving of that, and you and me included. We really are. We really do deserve that level of attention and whatever we need to feel well. Obviously not at the expense of somebody, but yeah, I just felt like it was important to say that just in case there is that listener out there that really just doesn't feel good about themselves for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. And like some of you who are navigating through your own trials and tribulations, we over here at We Got Nothing are going to have to go through our own maze of trials and tribulations with the loss of our great co-host Ayhan Ozyesil, but he is moving on to bigger and better things, and we wish him nothing but love and respect. And flat out, folks, as for what this season has in store and what other projects Life on Saturn has in store, we got nothing.
Awesome, man. And also, I just want to say I am working on some stuff, blog projects and stuff coming soon, and I'd like to hope that maybe I can come back and promote some of that stuff on here.
And how would you like people to follow you, Ayhan?
As of right now, you can just follow me on my Instagram or my TikTok at papahan.com or at han.com. So either one of those works.
And if you would like to see what other projects Life on Saturn has already done or could possibly have in store, please follow Life on Saturn Productions on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And if you would also like to see what kind of projects I provide, usually it's a lot of me reading off my own poetry, but you never know what the future could possibly have in store. So follow me at Catalyst Jost on Instagram. And with all that being said, folks, thank you so much for listening to us. We can't wait to see what Season 2 has in store. And please, please, please keep your vibes dope. Keep your zen flowing. And as always, peace.